It's Morning Line on AM 560 KWTO. My name is Tim, and Gary's here. We're producing, taking phone calls at 862-9977 and 1-800-375-0056. We have a special guest this half hour, James Shuls from the Show Me Institute. Good morning, James. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get his microphone on. Gary, have you got his mic on? Number 6.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, well,
all right.
You got it?
Glad to be here, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure, and I appreciate your time. And James is with the Show Me Institute. He's the Education Policy Analyst. And first of all, for folks that might not be aware of the Show Me Institute, tell us, what is the Show Me Institute?
Yeah, so the Show Me Institute is a 501c3. That means we're a tax-exempt charity, essentially, where we focus on public policy issues from a free market perspective. So we do research, we write, we have a blog, and we try to educate people about issues from a free market perspective.
And that you don't normally take sides on an issue.
Well, we always have a bent towards free markets. We believe that smaller government works, and it works best whenever people have more say in where their tax dollars go and more control over their own money. And so we do have a free market perspective, but we always try to educate people. That's our biggest mission.
But you try to look at both sides of a particular issue.
Oh,
and educate.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's key. What I am very impressed with this organization, the Show Me Institute, is that you don't take a particular side without having an educated answer to questions that folks have about particular issues.
Absolutely. I mean, our stance is principled, but we always look at the facts, and we're going to go where the facts lead us and try to present that to the people as clear a message as we can.
Now, James Shuls is the Education Policy Analyst. What is your background, James?
Well, so I have a bachelor's and master's in elementary education. I taught right here in Republic, Missouri, and I have a PhD in education policy.
A local fella.
That's right.
You taught here?
Taught here. Lived here for a number of years, married a local girl from Nixa, and have lots of family in the area.
So you were around this area for some time. You currently live in St. Louis.
That's absolutely right. I moved there for the job at the Show Me Institute because I really agreed with the mission. I've been there a year now. I love education. I love free markets. I want to educate people about the issues, and so I really enjoy my role there at the Show Me Institute.
All right, if you want to learn more about the Show Me Institute, you can go online, showmeinstitute.org, showmeinstitute.org. You also have a Facebook page, lots of ways to connect.
Oh, absolutely. You can connect with us on Facebook, on Twitter. We have a blog. It's showmedaily.org, and we have stuff there almost every day, so you can connect with us in a number of different ways.
All right, and coming up tomorrow morning over at the library on South Campbell, there's going to be a policy breakfast.
Right.
And you're going to speak. What we're going to talk about?
Well, so the topic's called Redefining Public Education. And so the event is in conjunction with Milton Friedman Legacy Day. And so Milton Friedman was a really famous economist. And one of the biggest things he talked about was school choice. And in a really critical piece he wrote back in 1955, he said, just because we finance public education doesn't mean that the government has to operate public education. So what we're going to be talking about tomorrow is, what is public education? Is it a certain type of school, or is it really the idea that all kids should have access to a great education? So we'll be looking at that issue and talking about public education, talking about school choice and what that means for Missouri and for Springfield.
What is school choice? I mean, talk a little bit about what choices do we have if you're the average family here in Springfield and you can't afford a private school for your kid. Your choice is pretty much go to the public school.
Right, that's absolutely right. I mean, most people have what's called school choice by mortgage. So you pay for a house in a certain area and you get the quality of the schools delivered in that area. And that's basically the only choice you have. And so if you have the means, you can afford a nice house in a nice neighborhood with a great school, or you can afford private school. But most families don't have choice. They can't choose where their kids go to school. You know, I've talked to families who say, I'm upside down in my mortgage. How can I possibly move to some other place? And so most families don't have choice. Now I should mention that Springfield does have a little bit of intra-district choice intra-district choice, I should say, where you could choose within the district, but that's even limited. And there aren't, many parents can't access that.
Does the Show Me Institute support school choice?
Well, so the Show Me Institute doesn't take positions, as you've said, but we absolutely believe that parents know best what's best for their kids. And so parents should be able to choose where their kids go to school. And we think that there are lots of studies that show that will benefit students. When parents have a choice and schools compete for students, that students win, and actually taxpayers win too. Because the schools compete, they start producing better results, and they oftentimes do it for cheaper than they're doing it right now.
So you would be in favor of a voucher system where a student could pick a particular school, or a family, a mom and a pop could pick where their child learns.
Well, so vouchers are one way of sending kids with public dollars to private schools, and we would be supportive of that or other options. There are scholarships provided by tax credits, or something called education savings accounts. There are really different types of programs that other states have put into place that enable students to use dollars to go to a school of their choice, including private schools. And we think that students would benefit from that type of situation.
You know, you can think out of the box here. Public schools are, even back from the 50s and the 60s, you were taught according to your age and not your ability. If you were at the certain age of being in the 3rd grade or 4th grade, you were moved along, and that's how you were taught. Mm-hmm. The only thing you really had in common with the person sitting at the next desk were that you were of the same age.
Right.
And today, you know, we can learn that some kids should be excelled, not depending on their age, but their academic ability, further along than others. And so, you know, maybe the whole concept of having an elementary school in a particular neighborhood should be thought about.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we could think about education from so many different ways. And as you mentioned, 50 years ago, you walk into a classroom, it's probably going to look almost very similar to what it looks like today. We're doing things in a very similar way, but we don't have to. There are so many ways we can think about structuring education. That's one of the things about the way we do school now, is we try to have this common system where everybody's doing basically the same thing, but we know kids aren't common. Not all kids are the same, and kids need different types of things. So we need to be thinking outside the box of how we can best educate all of our kids and give them the options that they need.
All right, that's James Shuls of the Show Me Institute. And if you have a question or a comment, you can telephone 862-9977 and 1-800-375-0056. And the breakfast tomorrow also features Representative Eric Burleson in honor of the Friedman Legacy for Freedom Day. You might talk a little bit more about Friedman. I don't know that a lot of us know who he is or what he did.
Right, so Milton Friedman was a Nobel-winning economist, and he was probably one of the leading thinkers on limited government and free enterprise. So he regularly advocated for smaller government, for putting the power back into the people's hands, and he wrote on a number of different issues, but education and school choice was one issue he wrote about quite regularly. And that's what the Friedman Foundation for Educational Excellence, or for school choice, advocates, that they try to carry on his legacy of expanding school choice. Like he said before, that education is best when it's in the hands of the parents, not whenever it's in the hands of bureaucrats or elected officials. But parents know what's best for their kids, and through their choices, they can get the best education for their kids.
And if I'm a parent, here's what I'm thinking. By going to a public school, I'm inclined to think that they're going to receive a more liberal education when I want to teach of a more conservative viewpoint to my child.
Well, I mean, if you think about why public schools were created, I mean, in the 1800s, common schools were created because they wanted to stamp out Catholicism. So that's really the impetus for public education. They wanted to stamp out Catholic education. And what's happened over time is they've been stamping out lots of different religions and trying to make it as secular as possible, and trying to have a common education, as I mentioned, that can teach all kids. So they don't try not to teach any values. But really, as we know, if you try not to teach any values, you're teaching some values. So parents want to have choices for lots of different reasons. You might want to choose a school because you have a certain type of religious background or a certain political view or whatever it is. I had my kids in a public school a year ago, and I didn't like the way they were teaching math. I thought they were doing a very poor job, and I pulled them out mid-year and put them into a private school simply because I thought they were doing a very bad job of educating my kids. So parents want choices for lots of different reasons. And school choice, whether that's through a charter school or some sort of private school, can give them the options that they want and need.
And the state funding for our public school system is almost out of hand. I mean, the percentage of the total revenue that this state spends on education, it's enormous. It's obviously and clearly the number one expenditure. And is that money, according to the Show Me Institute, is that money being spent wisely?
I would say probably not. I mean, people say, how much does it cost to educate kids? And I say, I don't know how much it costs because schools spend whatever you give them. So if you give them X number of dollars, they'll spend it all, and next year they want X plus more. So how much does it cost to educate kids? I don't know. In Springfield, we spend close to $10,000 per kid. If you have a class of 20 students, that's $200,000. I imagine your teacher's probably making $40,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. Where is all the money going? So there are real questions if we could spend money more efficiently than we are, and I think we probably could.
That's James Shuls of the Show Me Institute. Very interesting. And he'll take your phone call, 862-9977, 1-800-375-0056 on Morning Line, AM 560 KWTO. Okay, we're in the home stretch of Morning Line on a Tuesday morning, and the Show Me Institute is sponsoring this half hour of the program, and I have as my guest James Shuls of the Show Me Institute, and they're going to have a breakfast and a public engagement tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, at the Library Center on South Campbell. And it's going to be an interesting hour talking about education, redefining public education, advancing the ideas of Milton Friedman, redefining public education. James, one of the things that kind of annoys me, I don't know if it's annoying, if that's the right term, but this tenure that's allowed inside of the public school system, particularly at the university level, where at some point when you've worked there long enough, nobody can touch it. No matter what you do, you get school tenure and you're there till you retire. And I'm not sure that that's fair.
Right. Well, the economist in me, I'm not really a trained economist, but hates the idea of the word fair, by the way. But let me say I agree with you. It's sort of weird to say you've worked here a few years and now you've got basically a guaranteed contract for the rest of your life. And basically in state statute, that's what it says. You have a permanent contract when you become a tenured teacher in K-12 public schools. I did a recent survey of school superintendents and asked them about their thoughts on education. We're going to have that paper coming out in about a month. And one of the things they said is they would be very open to reforming teacher tenure. About 93% of superintendents want to reform teacher tenure. But we can't seem to get anywhere on that because the teachers like having that job protection, and why wouldn't you? If you could have a job contract for life, you would probably like it as well. But it's certainly not what's best for kids. I mean, because it protects bad teachers. The idea wasn't to protect bad teachers, but that's absolutely what happens.
And here's, because we had a recent tax issue here in Springfield in regard to the public school system. Anytime, this is my opinion now, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, but anytime you come out opposed to, say, a school levy, then you are considered, well, you're against teachers or you're against education.
Right.
Anytime that you oppose the local school system on a tax issue or a financial issue, then many see you as opposed to education.
Right.
And that's not the case at all. But there are many of us in the community that believe that maybe the dollars should be spent more wisely and maybe that we should rethink where our public education system's going.
Right. Well, absolutely. I mean, when you say that people, if you oppose taxes, people say you're against public education. I hear stuff like that all the time where people say I'm against public education. And that's what this redefining public education is about. People think that public education means a school district where kids are assigned to schools, where we elect the school board. They think that that is public education. But that's just a system. That's just one way we deliver public education. And in reality, in Missouri, we have school boards that aren't elected. We have schools that don't serve all the students, magnet schools. Some of them have admissions tests that are public schools. We have all kinds of exceptions to the rules that don't fit within that traditional model. When you really think about it, public education is this idea. It's an idea that we want kids to be educated. And so that could happen in a traditional public school. It could happen in a private school. It could happen in any type of school. Kids could get a great education. And so by saying you want money spent more wisely, you're not anti-public education. You just want it done better.
But you perceived as that.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the problems I think that we have in our community. If you want to change the way public education is disseminated, you're seen as maybe a radical, and you're not at all. And the
Right.
Show Me Institute is pointing that out. And there's a breakfast tomorrow morning, and it's going to be from 8 to 9 at the Library Center Auditorium on South Campbell. And you are invited. The public's invited. You can call ahead if you'd like or just show up. Here's the phone number, 314-454-0647, 314-454-0647. Our guest is James Shuls, who's the Education Policy Analyst the education policy analyst for the Show Me Institute. Based out of St. Louis, but you're growing membership not just in St. Louis, but hopefully here in the Ozarks as well.
Absolutely. Well, we know that people here in the Ozarks like small government, and we believe that we have a really great message for those people. We have lots of great information we'd love to put in their hands, and so we would love people to reach out to us, to connect with us, and to follow our stuff online. But really, we want to build that partnership with people here in Southwest Missouri because we believe that the Ozarks will benefit from limited government and from responsible, educated citizens.
And more importantly, if you're involved in the Show Me Institute, you're going to be able to learn, become educated on issues of the day that impact Missouri. And there's probably not a bigger issue than education because it takes most of the revenue that the state takes in every year.
I think it's about 36% of the general revenue of the operating budget. Comes from the state. Plus, you have the local tax dollars. You know, a lot of your local taxes or property taxes go to education. So it's a huge thing in our budget in the state, that's for sure.
And the Show Me Institute is involved. You're in Jefferson City when the legislature convenes, and you're interested in educating lawmakers about what the truth is about public education.
Right. So we're not lobbyists. We don't lobby, but we educate. We provide materials. We'll go and testify on issues and explain what would happen and if a certain type of bill passes. And so we try to stay actively engaged and inform legislators just as much as we inform the regular citizens. Sometimes legislators need to be informed even more.
James, what is the number one problem with public education in Missouri?
Well, I think the number one problem is that we assign students to schools. I mean, think about that. If you were assigned to anything else, you were assigned to go to your barber, you were assigned to go to the grocery store down the block, you would hate that. But yet we assign kids to the school regardless of their needs, regardless of what the kid is like. That's a problem because not all schools can serve every kid, and not all kids are the same. So I think if we give kids greater opportunity to choose their school, we'll see a lot of improvement in our state.
And by choosing the school, then the schools become competitive.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, the schools, as I mentioned, try to offer a common product to everyone. But whenever we have kids choose, the schools start competing. You know, I'm based out of St. Louis, and we have this thing going on right now where these unaccredited districts, the students are now allowed to transfer. You have these districts that have been unaccredited, they're failing for years, but now they see students leaving. And you know what those schools are doing? They're starting to compete. They're saying, oh my goodness, our students are leaving, we need to do something. And they're trying to improve in everything that they do to try to serve the students better. And that's what happens in school choice. Whenever parents start leaving, start choosing the school with their feet, the schools start competing and innovating and figuring out how they can serve students better.
And the technology aspect of this, how some schools may have certain abilities, computers, notebooks, and some don't, that's another part of the choice, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. It's part of the choice, and some people want their kids to be on computers more, learning more on computers. Others don't. Others want their kids in a more traditional classroom where the teachers have more one-on-one instruction. But you have a district like Springfield, if you put in a policy in place district-wide, what choice do you have as a parent? Even if you could choose within the district, if you have every school offering the same thing, it's like saying you can go to a McDonald's over here, you can go to a McDonald's over there, but you get basically the same product. And so with choice, you get different types of schools. You get them offering classes in a different type of way, teaching a different instructional practice. And so people get a lot more options when you allow them to choose different types of schools.
Is this why homeschooling is becoming so popular today?
Well, homeschooling is becoming popular for a number of reasons. I mean, some people do it for religious reasons. Some people do it because they don't like testing in schools. There are lots of reasons to choose homeschooling, but the idea there is the same as the idea here. It's that kids are unique, and they need unique instruction rather than instruction to cover the masses. And so homeschooling is sort of a school choice. It's a prime example of school choice. It's individualized instruction for each kid.
Because more parents feel that they can do a better job educating their kids than sending the kid to the public elementary school, junior high, high school. They could do a better job at home than what the public is doing, and yet over a third of all of our revenues are spent on these public schools.
Right. Well, I mean, many parents probably could do a very good job at home. I mean, there were so many days when I was teaching At first, I taught first grade, and I would sit back at the end of the day and look at what I covered and be so disappointed that I didn't cover more. Because you have so much stuff to deal with in a class of 20 or 25 students. You have discipline problems, you have interruptions from the office, you have all kinds of things going on in the classroom that don't allow you to cover everything you want to cover. And I always thought, what if I only had one kid or two kids? How much more could I cover? And so I really applaud those parents who say they're going to homeschool their kids, and I hope that they do their best that they can, and that I'm sure that the results typically turn out pretty well.
That's fascinating. James Shuls has been here as our guest. He's an education policy analyst for the Show Me Institute. Talk about your breakfast, if you would. Talk about the breakfast that'll take place tomorrow at the library on South Campbell.
Absolutely. We would love for all of your listeners to come out to the Library Center on South Campbell as we talk about Milton Friedman's legacy, talk about redefining public education. What does that mean? What is school choice? How could it work in Missouri? How could it work in Springfield? We'll have Representative Eric Burleson there with us offering some comments, and we'd love for your listeners to come out.
That's going to be 8 o'clock tomorrow, the Library Center Auditorium at 4653 South Campbell, and you are invited. You can simply show. The light breakfast will be provided, and it's an opportunity to visit with a lot of folks who know a lot about public education in Missouri, and I hope that you'll take part in that. And the Show Me Institute has been a sponsor of this broadcast talking about school choice, and we have just a few moments remaining. If you could leave our listeners with one thought about school choice, what would that be, James?
Well, I think the real thing is that kids are different. They need different options, and school choice allows us to customize education for each kid.
And for more information, you can visit showmeinstitute.org, showmeinstitute.org. Also go to Facebook or Twitter to learn more about the Show Me Institute. It's in my view, a very prominent organization in Missouri that's doing what they can to help us all become educated about issues of the day. They don't take a particular side, but they educate, and that's key, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The more that you can become educated on issues, the better choices you'll make as a person in your life.
That's right, in all areas of your life.
Thank you, James. Good luck.
Thank you.